Hey, everybody. I'm Lisa Brennan.
And I'm Justin Trice. Welcome to Crime of the Arts,
a true crime podcast that peeks behind the curtain to shine a light on the dark and untold truths of the creative arts.
From film set mysteries to celebrity murders and heists, these two theater nerds will usher you into the unknown.
Today, we have two very interesting stories for you. We have a theme. I swear to God, we didn't do this on purpose.
We did not plan this. We never go in knowing what the other person's going to do. But as soon as we get on here to get ready to record, we reveal what we're doing. And it's just like, damn, again.
We did it again. You can tell that we've been friends for a long time. Yeah.
Yes.
So today I am going to tell you the story of Phil Hartman. He was a amazing comedic actor.
Yes, beloved
his life ended tragically.
Yes.
What do you have, Justin?
Today, I'm going to get into the killing of Marvin Gaye. You know, iconic singer, Marvin Gaye R&B classics that you might know as in What's Going On, Sexual Healing, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, and Let's Get It On, just to name a few.
If you don't know Marvin Gaye, y'all.
Yeah, you best go listen now.
Yeah.
You better.
He's amazing. It's iconic. So I'll start today. On May 28th, 1998, Phil Hartman died at the age of 49 years old when his wife, Bryn, oh boy, with the names, Bryn Omdal Hartman. I'm just going to say Bryn Hartman. I'm just going to skip that part. Okay?
Bryn Hartman.
Yeah.
Fair
when
enough.
when his wife, Bryn Hartman, murdered him inside their Los Angeles home before turning the gun on herself. America was shocked to see the headlines about how Phil Hartman's wife shot him dead in a grisly murder-suicide. However, to friends who'd known the couple for years, Phil Hartman's death was a long time in the making. It's terrifying, especially it being a spouse murder-suicide, which unfortunately is prevalent in the world. You know, you go to bed every night with that person and you have to have some kind of level of trust. And once that's broken, it's horrifying, especially in something like this. So at the time, Hartman was celebrated as one of the funniest comedians in America, thanks to his work on hits like Saturday Night Live and The Simpsons. I mean, he's one of my favorites.
He was absolutely one of my favorites, especially back in the day on SNL, like his caveman lawyer. Just, I don't know if you ever seen that, but he had a sketch where essentially he was a caveman that was stuck in ice because of like the ice age, and he was thawed out and he went on to better his life and become a lawyer. Amazing. And he's literally in the courtroom. He's like, Your Honor, I'm just a simple caveman lawyer. He's like, your technology scares me and your vehicle, like, I'm just paraphrasing it, but it was hysterical. I mean, the man just had perfect timing.
Yes.
And then you mentioned The Simpsons, him as Lionel Hutz, attorney at law. Yeah, the man just seems like a genuinely good person. Very good comedic timing. And, he wrote most of his stuff too, very original stuff.
True talent. Yeah.
True talent.
So while many comedians have been known for dark personal lives lurking behind their humorous on-screen presence, Phil Hartman's story ultimately proved to be especially tragic. He was born in September of 1948 in Ontario, Canada, and he was the fourth of 8 children in a devout Catholic home. It's a lot of freaking
That's
kids.
A lot of kids.
Holy moly.
Those are the days.
I got one and I'm exhausted. Yet with so many siblings vying for their parents' love, Hartman found it difficult to earn attention and affection. He was quoted saying, "I suppose I didn't get what I wanted out of my family life, so I started seeking love and attention elsewhere. This need for attention undoubtedly spurred the young Hartman towards acting out in school, and after the Hartman family moved to the U.S. when Hartman was 10, he began to earn a reputation for being the class clown." Phil Hartman would eventually go on to study graphic arts at California State University, which ultimately afforded him the opportunity to open his own graphic design company, something I never knew about him.
I was going to say I did not know any of that, but that makes sense now. Some of the characters he's played, he has a business background. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah. His company was successful, with Hartman's business helping to create over 40 album covers of various bands, including Poco America, as well as the logo for Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Okay.
Interesting, right? It was during his time working in graphic design that Phil Hartman finally discovered a passion for comedy. When in 1975, he began attending classes with the comedy group The Groundlings. So in 2014, a New Yorker article highlighted the Phil Hartman biography by Mike Thomas entitled You Might Remember Me, Hartman is rightfully remembered for the almost immediate way he took to performing comedy. Hartman was instantly good, a performer whose utter commitment begat brilliance, an indispensable utility player who could be counted on in all scenarios. Comedic actor John Lovitz, also a groundling at the time, considered Hartman a big star and someone who could be told to play a shoe salesman and deliver something jaw-dropping. He once said whatever he was going to imagine or say was nothing you can imagine or think of. He could do any voice, play any character, make his face look different without makeup. He was the king of the groundlings.
That's a heck of an improv group, too. You mentioned John Lovitz, who is another SNL alum and does a lot of voiceover work as well. And he had a few string of films, too, back in his day.
So thanks to his undeniable charisma and talent, Phil Hartman began to garner more praise and more work. Voice work and small roles in films began to come in as well. Hartman even assisted fellow groundling Paul Reubens to develop a new icon, Pee Wee Herman character. It was then in 1985 that Phil met Bryn, the woman who would become his third wife and ultimately his killer. Tragically, the seeds of Phil Hartman's death were sown long before the horrific event actually occurred. It's crazy to me that people could see this coming for such a long time. So he was killed in 1998 and they met in 1985.
That whole time they saw whatever dynamic it was within their relationship.
Yeah. So the two met at a party. Bryn was sober at the time, despite the fact that she had a sordid history with drugs and alcohol. In the article, You Might Remember Me, Mike Thomas explains that when Phil and Bryn met, he may well have been at his most vulnerable state in years. His second marriage ended, and it had shaken him to his core, and his performing career wasn't taking off. Bryn was strikingly beautiful, and the affections of a statuesque blonde may have bolstered Hartman's deflated self-image. But their relationship was bumpy from the get-go. Nevertheless, Phil pressed forward with his comedy career after working with Reubens on the film Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and he was hired as both a writer and a performer on Saturday Night Live in 1986, alongside some of the show's most high-profile performers such as Dana Carvey, Kevin Nealon, and Jan Hooks.
He had quite the season. Dana Carvey.
Turtle. During Phil Hartman's tenure at the show, he created some of the program's most beloved characters and perfected some of his most uncanny impressions. From his abrasive Frank Sinatra to his wonderfully silly unfrozen caveman lawyer, Hartman had a knack for playing seedy or self-important characters who, despite their egos, were still lovable and fun to watch. In 1990, on the heel of his successful performances on SNL, Phil began to play various roles in other classic television shows, like The Simpsons. Staying true to his wheelhouse of playing wonderfully self-absorbed or slimy characters, Hartman originated the roles of Lionel Hutz, the second-rate lawyer, Troy McClure, the C-list Hollywood actor, and Lyle Landley, the charming con man from the universally praised Conan O'Brien penned episode, Marge vs. the Monorail.
So I have, yes, Marge versus the Monorail. Like, whenever you look up a list of top 10 musical moments of The Simpsons, because for those that started watching Simpsons later in life, the earlier seasons always had musical elements. And the Monorail one was basically like their version. It was Phil Hartman's version of You Got Trouble, My Friend from Music Man. Like, it was, he essentially was that sleazy guy. But I think his Simpson role for me that just to this day I can't get over is Troy McClure, the self-vain actor who has some weird fetishes which they never fully explain in the show. There's an episode where he marries Marge's sister and he's doing it just to...
I actually remember that episode.
Yeah, he's doing it to further his career. He doesn't care about her. And then he explains to her that he has this weird fetish that he's like, some might deem so crazy, so insane, but they never talk about it. But the thing that I love about his character is in that same episode, to boost his career, they say you got to go to Broadway. So they create Planet of the Apes, the musical, which I don't care. I still will play that clip to this day a couple times a month. I want it to become an actual Broadway show. They do it in the style of like 80s synth music, like Les Mis. And it's him being the human trying to escape the Planet of the Apes. Like, look up that clip, people. It's gold.
So, by the time Phil Hartman left SNL in 94, there was no denying the fact that the tone of the show had begun to change, thanks in part to the arrival of new cast members with particularly silly and absurd sensibilities, like Adam Sandler and Chris Farley. After nearly 10 years in New York with the sketch comedy show, Hartman, his wife, and their 2 children moved back to California, where Hartman was able to focus on his latest project, an ensemble comedy show called News Radio, where Hartman once again got to do what he did best. Play a smug but endearing radio announcer named Bill McNeil. The show was smartly written and a critical and commercial success, running for 5 seasons, 4 of which included Hartman. After making the move back to California, Bryn began to struggle once again with substance abuse, a factor that eventually figured heavily into Phil Hartman's death. The two were known to fight, and threats were sometimes made, and friends and family of Hartman were often not shy about the fact that they found Bryn to be an unsettling presence. In 1987, Hartman had confided in his friend and fellow Groundlings performer Cassandra Peterson that he planned on proposing to Bryn. And Peterson reportedly exclaimed, "Oh God, no." Peterson was then asked to leave Hartman's office, and the two did not speak again for years. Recalling the incident, Peterson said, "It's the first time and I think the last time I ever saw him angry." So he was just blinded by love and the way she looked and made him feel. It
happens to the best of us.
Phil's second wife, Lisa Strain, had her own run-ins with Bryn. Despite the fact that Strain and Hartman had divorced, the two remained close friends. But when Strain had sent the Hartmans a congratulations card after the birth of their son, Sean, Lisa was not met with a thank you, but a death threat from Bryn Hartman.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, postpartum is a bitch, but I don't know that I went around threatening people's lives.
Right.
In the late 1990s, as the Hartmans' relationship began to deteriorate and Bryn Hartman spiraled deeper into the depths of substance abuse, friends and family had no idea about the violence that was erupting. Both the Hartmans kept guns in their home, and oftentimes Bryn would pick fights before bed. Phil Hartman developed a routine where he would pretend to be asleep as a way to avoid his wife's abuse and manic behavior. On the night of May 27th, 1998, Bryn had gone to dinner with a friend that had later said that she'd been in a good frame of mind. After she returned home, Bryn is said to have argued with Hartman, and Phil was angry with his wife for a previous incident where she had hit their daughter while she was under the influence of alcohol, and Phil had threatened to leave his wife if she began to use drugs again. Phil went to bed, and it was sometime before 3 a.m. that Bryn Hartman entered the bedroom where Phil Hartman slept and shot him between the eyes, in the throat, and in the chest. She was intoxicated and had just snorted cocaine.
That is just crazy. Like, clearly this was premeditated. You were just like, I'm going to wait till he falls asleep. You know, he probably had no clue what was happening.
She did it, like, in between the eyes, in the throat, and in the chest. She was just straight down the middle. In a state of shock, Bryn quickly left the house and drove to visit a friend. His name was Ron Douglas, where she confessed to the killing. Possibly due to the fact that Bryn was prone to dramatic and manic outbursts, her friend did not initially believe her admission. The two drove back to her home, and upon seeing Phil laying shot dead in the couple's bed, Douglas called 911. By the time the authorities arrived, Bryn had barricaded herself in the bedroom, where she then took her own life with the same gun she had used to kill her husband. They were standing outside when she shot herself. The couple's 2 children were escorted from the home and were later raised by family members. I believe the kids were also still in the house when she did it.
They were. I remember seeing that story. They were still in a house. They were like 2 bedrooms over when that went down.
So as news spread of the shocking murder-suicide, tributes began to roll in all around the show business world. Rehearsals for The Simpsons were canceled for the day, as well as performances from the Groundlings. His character on News Radio was said to have suffered a heart attack, and Hartman's longtime friend and former SNL colleague, John Lovitz, filled in for him during the show's 5th and final season. So in the wake of his passing, NBC executive Don Ohlmeyer said that Phil was blessed with a tremendous gift for creating characters that made people laugh. Everyone had the pleasure of working with Phil, knows that he was a man of tremendous warmth, a true professional, and a loyal friend. Others commented on Phil's death, including Steve Martin, The Simpsons creator Matt Groening, and many more. In the years since Phil Hartman's death, he has consistently been named one of the all-time greatest performers in Saturday Night Live's history. Like many stars of the long-running sketch show before him, Hartman had joined the sad but revered ranks of stars who are gone too soon, such as John Belushi, Gilda Radner, and Chris Farley.
Gone way too soon.
While Hartman's career came to an abrupt and unfair end, his legacy continues to live on and inspire. It took a rare and unique talent to turn swarmy characters into much-loved cultural icons. And it was a rare and unique person who could take fame in stride and continue to be kind, warm, and gentle. Phil Hartman could and did do both. So this is coming from an article called By All That's Interesting. It was checked by John Krowowski. I knew Phil Hartman was murdered. I guess I didn't know the depths of it.
I mean, I guess we'll never know her justification because she took her own life.
And it's crazy because if people could know her as a sober person and maybe don't see those, red flags.
Well, that too, yeah.
And then you don't know what happens behind closed doors after she's wasted. And it's just human nature to want to see the best in people, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So that is the story of the tragic death of Phil Hartman, comedic genius, and seems to be all around incredible person. So.
Yes, to this day, he's definitely severely missed. And I mean, we haven't really, even SNL, we haven't really had a talent of it to his level until maybe around Bill Hader came around. And I was like, you might be the next Phil Hartman. But the fact remains, no one will ever replace Phil Hartman, For sure. All right, dude, what you got? So for this episode, I'll be discussing the killing of Marvin Gaye at the hands of his own father just a day before his 45th birthday and its impact on his legacy as an artist. I don't know this story. It is a sad one. It's also a very complicated one. His father didn't just up and murder him. I'm going to get into their whole relationship. Starting from the 60s all the way to his untimely death in the 80s, Marvin Gaye was widely regarded by many as one of the best musicians of his generation. He's well known for creating multiple R&B classics that are still beloved by many, even years after his passing, including What's Going On, Sexual Healing, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, Let's Get It On, just to name a few. For those Marvel fans, diehard MCU fans, in Captain America Winter Soldier, when Sam Wilson, Falcon, is, he meets Steve Rogers for the first time, they're having a conversation. Steve is explaining how he's been frozen for 90 something years. Sam Wilson goes on to say, if you want to catch up in this world, listen to Marvin Gaye, Trouble Man. Trouble Man will explain to you everything that you've missed. So clearly, in terms of how influential Marvin Gaye could be, for those that aren't familiar with his music, first off, shame on you. But second off, listen to some of those songs that I told you. And if you just want to catch up on the world, maybe you should listen to Trouble Man. Well, dude, you listed those and I sang them all in my head as you went down the line. Yeah, as I'm reading it, I hear it all in my head, too. It's like a little medley. I'm like, all right. Okay. What's Going On especially became I don't know if it's for you too, but for our generation after 9/11, they remade What's Going On. Yeah. From when they made that song to how it still resonated after 9/11 was just music is very powerful. Just thinking about it now, I'm like, all right, I might have to play some Marvin Gaye later myself. The circumstances surrounding his unfortunate killing at the age of 44 are tied deeply to his relationship with his family, and more specifically, his relationship with his father, who he shared a name with. Let's dive into the personal story and some of the events leading up to his killing in 1984. So Marvin Gaye was born on April 2nd, 1939 in Washington, D.C. as Marvin Gaye Jr. to his father, Marvin Gaye Sr., who was a church minister, and his mother, Alberta Gaye, who was a domestic worker at the time. In his youth, Marvin Gaye Jr. was bullied by other kids in the neighborhood because of his father's actions. His father actually cross-dressed quite a bit, which was greatly frowned upon. Obviously, back then, that was kind of a taboo subject. Some of the neighborhood questioned his father's sexuality. As a result, kids being kids bullied Marvin Gaye Jr. For his father's actions. This was one of the main reasons Marvin Gaye Jr. decided to add the E at the end of his name as a performer. I was going to say, with a last name like that. So he added the E to the end of his name as a performer to dispel some of the rumors about, him being potentially gay or his father being potentially gay. Well, and people are just ignorant and would just say, because your last name's Gay, it means you're gay. People are just idiots. Exactly. I mean, his childhood was off to a rocky start. And again, his father was very religious too. So that played a factor in his strict upbringing. So that's interesting that his father was a minister, you said, right? Mm-hmm. But he was also a crossdresser. Yeah. Those things don't usually go hand in hand. His father was definitely dealing with his own things. Dealing with his own struggles of who he was. And as a result, he just projected that animosity towards Marvin Gaye Jr. Additionally, his father never really approved of his decision to pursue a career in music. And as he started to gain more popularity in the music industry, Marvin Gaye Sr. started to feel more resentment towards Jr. because he became the breadwinner in the family while growing closer to his mother in the process. So that became an issue too. They never really reconciled their relationship together, but there was a brief period in time where they were on amicable terms after the successful release of his album, What's Going On, in May of 1971.
I mean, it's a battle, man. Family dynamics are hard, always. I think it's since becoming a parent, I think it's really interesting because some people just maybe aren't built for it.
Right.
It's a very selfless job. When I hear stories, and there's lots of them where parents are jealous of their children's success rather than bolstering them, I can't relate. I don't know how you could possibly feel that's owed to you in some way, that you're jealous of it.
It's all that resentment and they need to work on themselves. They're just transferring all of that negative energy and anger, resentment to the kid. And
then they prove you wrong, right?
Yeah,
they give you the big finger and they're like, bye-bye, look what I could do in spite of you. Yeah, it's just really sad that he had to go through that. And you can tell that his father is, just from what you've said already, a person who is struggling with his own mental health in some way, shape, or form. And that abuse is probably cyclical. It's coming from his childhood. And
correct.
Yeah.
So after a brief hiatus, Marvin Gaye reappeared to the public, when he released the hit single Sexual Healing in 1983.
Sexual Healing.
Yeah, accompanied by the Associated Sexual Healing Tour and the release of his album called Midnight Love. The album and tour were both his final musical contributions that he was able to share with the world before he was killed. While on tour, he started to grow more and more paranoid as he began using cocaine. Marvin Gaye, during most of his career, he always dealt with substance abuse, cocaine, alcoholism, other things.
Very prevalent in those performing industries.
Yeah.
Acting, music,
all of it. And again, he's battling his own issues from his childhood and everything else with his father. So yeah, he once the tour started, he started to grow more and more paranoid as he began using that cocaine again to help him get through his dislike for the touring. The paranoia was fueled by his belief that he was in grave danger and that someone was trying to murder him. It even got to the point where, it even got to the point where he was wearing a bulletproof vest right before he was supposed to go on and perform on stage.
What? Dude, people know. Somewhere innately he knew. Oh my God.
And once the tour ended in August of 1983, he returned to the U.S. to be closer to his mother as she was recovering from kidney surgery. So upon his return, he actually ended up staying at his parents' residence, which he had bought for them as a primary home.
Were
back
they
in
still
1973. Married? They were still married, still together.
Okay.
The mother, father, yeah. And again, there is a jealousy issue there because again, the father's very overprotective of the wife. Marvin Gaye is now giving the wife more attention, which is essence is cutting.
His father's just an asshole and he can't help himself.
Correct. So you know how that goes. But yeah, he moved into that home, which essentially he bought for them as their primary home back in 1973. Aww. His father was initially away on business when he first got back from tour and didn't return to the home until October of 1983. But before his return, his sisters had been staying at the residence, but they quickly left after their father came home because of all the fighting that occurred between Marvin Gaye Jr. and Sr. So it even got to the point where Marvin Gaye Sr. had to call the police on his son after a dispute to get him to leave the home. This is the type of shit that was going down. And again, keep in mind, Junior bought this place, but now we fight. You call the cops on me. Yeah. So
yikes.
That same year. Oh, and this is the part of the story for me where I'm like, it was already unraveling, but it's just going downhill now. That same year, Marvin Gaye decided to buy 38 Smith & Wesson pistol for his father as a Christmas gift that he could use for self-protection when he's not there. It was a pistol that his father used to murder him just a few months later.
Shut the fuck up. You shut up.
Yeah.
Justin.
Yeah.
So wait. Marvin Gaye Jr. bought Senior a pistol for Christmas, and then Senior used that same pistol to murder his son, who bought it for him.
Correct.
Months later.
He gave it to him for Christmas, and then just a few months later, 2 to 3 months, if
for
that.
Such a paranoid person, it's interesting that he would buy anyone a gun.
I mean, I get the sentiment. You wanted to, especially because, you know, again, this was during the height of his comeback. So I guess he was worried about people trying to raid.
He was probably worried about his family being in that house, and he's not going to give his mom a gun. He's going to give it to his dad to protect the family. It's just,
About 4 days before his actual death, Marvin Gaye Jr. had already expressed that he was experiencing suicidal thoughts and even jumped out of a sports car, suffering minor injuries, according to his sister, Janae.
Wow.
Those closest to him had felt that it was clear that he could no longer bear being alive anymore and wanted to end his life one way or another.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. There's specific documentaries on this as well. Most of his closest friends and family will tell you those last couple of years of his life, very dark because he was still battling the addiction. He was still very depressed, but he had said quite a few worrisome things to these people multiple times. And then the whole jumping out of the sports car happened.
Mental health is real.
Yeah, no, seriously.
You need to address your mental health. And we're about to get real serious for a second.
Yeah. We all have our issues. Some handle it better than not, but there's no shame in getting help if you need help or if you need therapy, because when you don't, we have these issues here where Senior's projecting all these things on his son, and that's messing up his development. And now his son's dealing with the past and the present and recovering from the drugs and the fame. There's just a lot going on there. Neither of those men never got help. Neither of them ever did.
And maybe had they, you know, this story would be very different, and Marvin Gaye would be some kind of Madonna icon who to this day still makes music and floors everybody. If you or anyone you know is suffering, there's lots of help and hotlines out there. We could throw some of that information in the end of this episode.
In the days leading up to his death, his parents had been arguing about a missing insurance policy letter they had. Although there was reportedly no violence involved, the fighting continued up until the night of Marvin Gaye Jr.'s murder, when there was loud shouting heard between his parents in their bedroom. Marvin Gaye Jr. proceeded to confront his father, asking him to stop shouting at his mother over the insurance papers, to which his father did not comply. Marvin Gaye Jr. then proceeded to hit his father multiple times, forcefully shoving him out of the room into the hallway of their home. Enraged by the events that just took place, Marvin Sr. returned with the pistol that his son had bought for him and proceeded to shoot him in the chest, piercing his heart. His mother, who was nearby when he was shot, screamed and ran out of the room, fearing for her own life. At the same time, his siblings, who were staying at a nearby house, heard the shots and some shouting, assuming that it was just the sound of a vehicle that was backfiring, you know? After walking outside to investigate the noise, they encountered their mother, who fell into his sister's arms and told them that Marvin Gaye Jr. had been killed.
Oh my God. She watched her son die at the hands of his father, her husband. Hands of
his father. So his family proceeds to return to the room where they found his body bleeding profusely. They claim that Marvin, who barely had the energy to speak in his state, told them that he got what he wanted and that he had nothing left in him anymore. Shortly after the shooting, the police arrived on the scene to arrest Marvin Sr. and to help take Jr.'s body to the hospital, where they pronounced him dead on arrival just a day before his 45th birthday. His body was cremated by the family and released into the Pacific Ocean.
45 is really young.
45 is very young.
I did not realize how young he was.
Yes,
we are way closer to 45 than 21, my friend.
Oh, you don't have to tell me. We're very close to that side of the spectrum. And again, this is a man who his career started earlier, late 20s, early 30s, kind of hit a lull, then resurged. He's in his 40s. He's essentially getting into his prime right now. And it was cut extremely short. And I mean, he was such a prolific singer. Marvin Gaye Sr. was taken to trial, where he pleaded no contest to a voluntary manslaughter charge in September of 1984. Given the circumstances surrounding the death, including the injuries Marvin Sr. had sustained during their fight and the amount of drugs in Marvin Jr.'s body, the court decided to sentence him to a 6-year suspended sentence and 5 years of probation. During the hearings, it was clear that Marvin Sr. felt remorse for his actions and tearfully stated that he wished that he could bring him back. Eventually, he was admitted to a nursing home during his sentencing, where he died of pneumonia in 1998. In the aftermath of his death, Marvin Gaye Jr. was remembered by many as one of the most iconic musicians to ever walk the face of this earth. His career, although cut short, was appreciated by his fans and other music enthusiasts due to his versatility and a variety of different music styles he was able to perform.
Definitely.
Yeah. Universally praised. I mean, anyone that knows his music, doesn't matter what country, what language you speak.
And you know it's him just from the sound of his voice.
Exactly.
You know? Going back for a second. So his father was in prison, I'm guessing, up until the trial, and they gave him a time served kind of scenario.
Right. It was 6 years suspended service, but 5 years probation. Yeah.
Was he an old man?
He was an old man. Yeah. Wow.
If he was 45, I mean, he had to be probably at least in his 60s or 70s.
Correct.
Wow.
So
I'm surprised that they didn't try to play self-defense or something to spare his family a real trial.
I was shocked at it too. Yeah, I mean, I was shocked at it too, but that factor too, again, the drugs in Junior's body, what Junior said, and you can see the visible markings on the father.
Well, and I'm sure that Junior was exponentially stronger than him based on their ages.
Junior experienced his fair share of tribulations and demons in his lifetime. There's no doubt that his music will continue to inspire others for years to come. To this day, people are still left wondering what else he could have contributed to the world had it not been for his untimely death. The legacies of our favorite musicians are often remembered by songs that they've made in their careers, but sometimes we forget that there are other aspects of their personal lives that aren't necessarily considered, even when we think about who they are as people. Although their musical work may give their audience a certain perspective of the way that they are as human beings, there are also other sides to the story that we must keep in mind to better understand the full picture. It's not always easy to separate the art from the artist, but it's important for us to do so to get another point of view on their work and truly understand some deeper meaning behind their music. While the stories are not always going to have happy endings, they're a critical component of the history of music and art that we must always remember regardless of the circumstances. When you look back at the history of the creative arts, it takes a lot of darkness to create the light the arts bring to the world.
Thanks for joining us this week. And if you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and go over to Apple Podcasts to rate and review.
Please check out our sources listed in the episode notes.
And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Crime of the Arts Podcast.
We're looking forward to having you back next week. Until next time, peace out, everybody.
Peace out, everybody.